It's fairly common for designers to use CSS frameworks, or what we call them, a collection of styles that make it easier to build our designs. One of the most popular is called 960 grid system. And what you see here is it sets a handful of classes that allow us to quickly develop column structured layouts. So you see right here where we have one column and then we have another. So we have a set of 3 columns. If I were to right click on this and choose inspect element, you can see that it's being applied by adding classes. In this case, it's adding a class of grid 4. So watch what happens if essence then becomes a class of grid 12. If I tab off it, that will now take up the entire width. And what's nice about this is when you're not having to measure on your own, you can create much more quickly. So if, let's say we want essence and dimensions right here to both be on the same line. So we want 2 column lines. Well, grid 12 is the maximum. It's a 12 column grid. So why don't we change this to half of that, 6, and then I'm going to do the same thing with dimensions. And notice dimensions is showing up because grid 4. So mostly we're trying to add up to 12, if that makes sense. Let's change it to 6. And now 6 plus 6 is 12, and they're both on the same line. What if we want purpose to take up a smaller amount? Well, we could say 6, and then this one would take up maybe 4. That equals 10. So that means we have a grid 2 available to fill up that void. And now we've adjusted it like so. So yeah, using a grid can be really, really helpful. However, it's important to know some people don't like grids. They think it's better to use your own CSS or to create your own grid by hand. And a lot of people feel that adding these unsemantic classes to your markup is a bad idea. Remember, a class name or an ID should describe what your element is. But grid 6, that says nothing. That's really visual. It doesn't describe anything about the content. So a lot of people don't like this. Now, it's important to know, though, there are a variety of ways to get out of this. There are what we call CSS preprocessors that allow us to create grids in our style sheets. However, that's going to be a little bit beyond the scope of this tutorial, and it's still okay. Plenty of people will use grids like this. So let's get started. I'm going to come back to the top and choose download. We're going to open this up. As you can see, it was created by Nathan Smith, and it's going to have a handful of folders in here, but don't let this scare you. What we really need here is within the code folder, and if we click on CSS, you can see there's a bunch of these here. What we need is either the 12 column or the 16 column. The only difference is the number of columns that it creates. If you need a lot more room, you might use 16 columns to fit more in, and each column will be a slightly narrower width. But we're going to stick with 12. So we will copy this one, and we also want a reset, and we can also add text.css that will reapply some base stylings, such as making the font weight bold, setting some sizes for our headings, etc. So I'm going to hit Command C or Control C to copy that. Next, I'll open up our working directory into our CSS folder and paste these in. So now we need to reference them within our page. So again, remember in the last lesson how I discussed HTTP requests. In a real world project, when you're ready to put this on the web, you will likely want to combine all of these into one single style sheet. But for now, you can keep them separated. So let's see what that gives us. Let's load it in the browser, and I don't have anything here. So let's make sure that we add a bit of markup. What we'll do is we'll add some traditional markup, and then I'm going to show you how to implement the grid framework. So first, we're going to have a div with a class of wrap. And within it, why don't we have our header and an H1 of my website. And once again, we'll do a nav with an unordered list, and we'll have 3 list items, each with an anchor tag that links to nowhere. Home, about, contact. And so our header is finished. Why don't we have our main section now? And we want to have our main content area and then perhaps a sidebar.